undrafted free agent who played 6 seasons for our own Denver Broncos. Since leaving football, Nate Jackson has become a writer. Nate is here to tell us about a brand new book he's got out. And you've been writing about a lot of things. I've seen your writing in various places online and in publications, but this book is specifically about fantasy football, right?
Well, not specifically about it. It covers a lot of ground, but it is the template. So I'm a former NFL player playing fantasy football with his derelict buddies.
It almost seems like an unfair advantage. I'm just going to say that.
Seems like, but isn't, which shows you why everybody can be an expert on fantasy football, because nobody really knows. You know, it's pretty much pin the tail on the donkey. You could do it blindfolded and have just as good of a chance of winning.
Why is that? I mean, is it just because the nature of football and people get hurt and people aren't as good as expected to be?
That's what it is. It's injuries. You know, you never know who's going to get hurt. Yeah. You never know how good a game a guy is going to have. For example, these guys who are trumpeted in the offseason as the fantasy saviors, well, there's other teams out there full of professional football players who are trying to stop that guy. Right. And so they're putting all their eggs in that basket trying to stop him, and a lot of times the numbers just don't equate.
It's interesting how it all plays out. So the book is called Fantasy Man, but what do you touch on outside of fantasy?
So outside of fantasy, I touch on what it's like moving on after a life in the NFL. So my body, the surgeries that I've had, the health care that I'm trying to maintain a body outside of the game. I'm doing some cannabis advocacy, so I'm talking about that world, learning about pain management and how to manage pain without taking pills, without doing the injections. That's an important part of the book. The writing world that I've gotten into, I have an experience with Hollywood now, in which I was promised the world by Hollywood director, and in the very end, the rug got pulled out from under. So these are lessons that we learn as we move on in life outside of the NFL. In the NFL, it's very cut and dry. It's either you're doing good or you're not. But out in the real world, it's a little more vague.
And as a former Denver Bronco, I know you grew up in California. You said you're initially a 49ers fan as a kid. I'm sure you follow the Broncos. What do you think so far of the season?
I think they look great. I'm really happy. Yeah, I'm happy for Koob. I love Coach Kubiak. He was my offensive coordinator here.
Because you played under Coach Shanahan.
Yes, exactly. So Super Bowl champions and then come out 3-0. You know, there are a lot of people in the media who will always doubt you. You know, they're always, I mean, they're eager to bury people. So the national media wants to poke holes in what the Broncos are doing, but I think they have the recipe, and I think as a team they're very cohesive.
And you mentioned cannabis. I mean, you've been a big proponent of medical marijuana and the NFL allowing that because of players' recovery and the injuries and such. Do you see that moving in the direction you want it to go into?
I see it moving slowly. It's happening. I think just because it's happening nationally. It's a conversation that's changing. A lot of states have legalized it for medical purposes. Here it's legal recreationally. Any player on the Broncos could walk in and get a prescription for it from any doctor in Denver.
But the NFL won't allow it.
But the NFL won't allow it. These guys really, really need it. And it's actually, science is showing that it's good for their brains. It's a neuroprotectant. And what industry do you know that your workers are going to get brain injuries? Football. So I think it's in the NFL's best interest to research it and stop punishing guys for it.
Well, Jake Plummer, I know, a former Bronco, also an advocate of that. So I'm sure there's much more discussion coming about that. So much interesting stuff. Fantasy Man is can you buy it now?
You can buy it now in stores everywhere. It's actually in tattered cover. There, I'm doing a reading there tomorrow.
Okay, which one? The one downtown?
No, Colfax.
Colfax. All right, the one on Colfax, tattered cover. What time are you going to be there, Nate?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock at night.
Right.
Stop by. Say hi, shake hands with a former Bronco. He knows a few things about fantasy football and a whole bunch of other stuff, and it should be an awesome read. Thank you so much for stopping by, Nate.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to meet you. Yeah. We appreciate that.
All right.
We'll get over to Greg. I know Greg plays fantasy like crazy, and he's horrible.
No, I'm good. I'll have you know, the fantasy league that I'm in, I've got a former NFLer in it and a current NFLer, and one is 1-2, and the other is 0-3. So that just goes to show you. They're terrible.
There's no advantage of knowing the inside game, is there?
And I'm sitting here some goon, and I'm 3-0. So hey, whatever.
Be a goon.
Whatever works. Yeah, I'll be a goon as long as I take that money at the end of the season.